The DNA test results lay spread across the mahogany dining table like a death sentence. Your siblings, Margaret said, her manicured fingers drumming against the wood. Same donor father. I've known for months. My wedding dress hung upstairs, waiting for tomorrow's ceremony that would never happen. David sat frozen beside me, his face drained of color, but something in Margaret's too-perfect smile made my stomach twist with suspicion. My name is Emma Thompson. I'm 28 years old, and tomorrow I was supposed to marry the love of my life. Well, that was the plan anyway. I teach third grade at Lincoln Elementary, which means I spend my days explaining why we don't eat glue and mediating disputes over who gets the good crayons. My salary barely covers my studio apartment rent, but I love what I do. The kids make me laugh every single day. Yesterday, little Marcus told me his mom said I was getting married to a fancy rich man. He wasn't wrong about the rich part. David Ashford comes from the kind of money that has its own zip code. His family mansion sits on 12 acres in the most exclusive part of town. When I first met him 2 years ago at a coffee shop near school, he was reading a book about teaching methods. Turns out he was researching ways to help his nephew with reading problems. That's David for you, always thinking about how to help someone else. The attraction was instant. He had this warm smile that made you forget about everything else. We talked for 3 hours that first day. He never mentioned his last name or the family business. I found out about his wealth gradually, piece by piece, like solving a puzzle I never asked for. Dating someone from David's world meant learning a whole new language. Dinner parties with cloth napkins thicker than my bed sheets, conversations about wine vintages and summer homes in places I couldn't pronounce. Everyone was polite to me, sure, but there was always this feeling I was performing in a play where everyone else knew their lines except me. Then there was Margaret. David's mother treated me like a stray cat he'd brought home, something to be tolerated until it eventually wandered away. She had this way of asking questions that sounded like compliments but felt like tiny cuts. "Oh, Emma, how refreshing that you don't worry about designer clothes." Or my personal favorite, "It must be so fulfilling to work with children when you don't have your own family obligations." But David loved me. That made everything else bearable. He saw past the class differences and the awkward family dinners. He understood that growing up with a single mom after my dad left taught me things money couldn't buy, like how to stretch a dollar and find joy in simple moments. Here's something most people don't know about me. I was conceived through a sperm donor. My parents struggled with infertility for years before turning to that option. Dad couldn't handle it emotionally and left when I was 7. Mom raised me alone, working double shifts as a nurse. She always said my donor father was probably a good man who wanted to help families. That knowledge shaped me in ways I'm still discovering. Everything between David and me felt perfect, almost too perfect looking back now. The morning before our wedding, I was folding programs in my apartment when my phone buzzed. David's text message made my stomach drop. "My mom wants you for dinner tonight. Just the 3 of us. She knows everything, Emma. We need to talk." Those ellipses felt ominous. David never used ellipses. He was direct, clear, always said exactly what he meant. And what did Margaret know? About what? I tried calling him immediately, straight to voicemail, tried again an hour later, same thing. The rest of that afternoon crawled by like torture. I kept replaying every conversation, every interaction with Margaret, trying to figure out what secret she'd uncovered. Did she find out about my family's financial struggles? Had she discovered something about my background that would embarrass the Ashford name? By 5 o'clock, I was pacing my apartment in circles, my wedding dress hung on the closet door, beautiful and hopeful and completely oblivious to the storm brewing just hours away. But there was no backing out now. Margaret Ashford wanted me for dinner, and somehow I knew this meal would change everything. The Ashford mansion always felt like walking into a museum where touching anything would trigger alarms. But that night, something was different. The usual warmth from the kitchen was replaced by an Arctic chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Margaret greeted me at the door wearing a black cocktail dress. Who wears black to their son's rehearsal dinner? Well, I guess it wasn't really a rehearsal dinner, but still. Her smile was perfect. Too perfect, like she'd practiced it in the mirror. "Emma, darling, right on time." She kissed both my cheeks in that European way rich people do. Her perfume smelled expensive and suffocating. David is waiting in the dining room. The dining room could seat 20 people comfortably. Tonight it was set for three. Three-place settings at one end of a table that could host a small army. The formal china was out, the kind with gold trim that probably cost more than my car. David stood when I entered. His face was pale, almost gray. His hands shook slightly as he pulled out my chair. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. David had steady hands, surgeon steady. He once performed CPR on a stranger who collapsed at a restaurant while everyone else panicked. But tonight, his hands trembled like autumn leaves. "You look beautiful," he whispered, but his voice cracked on the last word. Margaret served the first course herself. She'd dismissed the staff for the evening, she explained. We needed privacy for our little chat. The soup was some fancy French thing I couldn't pronounce. It tasted like disappointment. The small talk was brutal. Margaret asked about my dress fitting, the flower arrangements, the photographer. Each question felt like a tiny knife being twisted. David barely spoke. He kept glancing between his mother and me like he was watching a tennis match in slow motion. "The wedding cake looked lovely in the photos," Margaret said, cutting her soup with surgical precision. "Shame about all that work." My spoon stopped halfway to my mouth. "What do you mean?" David's face went even paler. That's when I realized he already knew. Whatever bomb Margaret was about to drop, David was in on it. The betrayal hit me before I even knew what I was being betrayed about. "Well," Margaret dabbed her lips with the linen napkin, "there won't be a wedding tomorrow." The words hung in the air like smoke. I set down my spoon because my hands started shaking too. "I don't understand." Margaret reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. She placed it on the table between the salt and pepper shakers like she was serving dessert. "I had some tests run, DNA tests, on both of you." My stomach dropped into my shoes. What kind of tests? The kind that reveal family connections. She opened the envelope with theatrical slowness. "You see, Emma, I've always been thorough about the people who enter my son's life. A hair sample from your coat, another from David's hairbrush. These things are so easy to obtain when you know the right people." The paper she spread across the table looked official, laboratory letterhead. Scientific terms I didn't understand. Numbers and percentages that might as well have been written in ancient Greek. "According to these results," Margaret continued, her voice clinical and detached, "you and David share the same biological father, a sperm donor identified as subject 247B. The room started spinning. The expensive chandelier above became a blur of crystal and gold. Oh, my ears rang like someone had slapped me. Hard. "That's impossible," I whispered. "I'm afraid it's quite possible." "Probable, actually. Sperm donors often father dozens of children. The odds were always there." Margaret folded her hands like she'd just announced the weather. "You're half-siblings." David finally spoke. His voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. "Emma, I just found out yesterday. I swear I had no idea." But the way he looked at me had changed. There was something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Horror? Disgust? The love that used to shine there was replaced by something that made my heart crack in half. I stared at the papers, trying to make sense of the scientific jargon. Genetic markers, probability percentages, it all looked real. Official. Terrifying. "This can't be right," I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. "I used the most reputable testing facility in the country," Margaret replied. "Triple verification. There's no mistake." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. David wouldn't meet my eyes. Margaret watched us both with the satisfaction of a cat who'd cornered two mice. Then came the final blow. "Of course, we'll need to handle this situation delicately." Margaret reached into her purse again and pulled out a checkbook. She wrote with the same precision she used to cut her soup. "The family name must be protected. The scandal would be devastating." She tore off the check and slid it across the table. $500,000. Made out to me. "This should be sufficient for you to relocate. Start fresh somewhere else. Perhaps another state would be best." Her tone suggested she was doing me a favor. like offering a generous severance package to an employee she was firing. I stared at the check. $500,000, more money than I'd see in 10 years of teaching. Blood money to disappear quietly and pretend the last 2 years never happened. You want me to leave town? My voice cracked. I want what's best for everyone involved. Margaret's smile never wavered. Surely you understand the impossibility of the situation. David still hadn't said a word. He sat there like a statue, letting his mother orchestrate my destruction. The man who claimed to love me was watching silently as she wrote me out of his life. But something nagged at me, something about the timing, the convenience. Margaret had always hated me, and now suddenly she had scientific proof I was unsuitable. After 2 years of trying to drive me away through subtle cruelty, she discovers we're related just hours before the wedding. The teacher in me started asking questions. When exactly were these tests done? Why hadn't she mentioned this months ago when she allegedly first learned the results? And why did she look so pleased about destroying 2 people's lives? I need some air. I stood abruptly, leaving the check on the table. Margaret's voice followed me toward the door. The money will expire if not deposited within 30 days, Emma. I suggest you don't let pride cost you financial security. I walked out into the night with my world in ruins. But somewhere beneath the heartbreak and shock, a tiny voice whispered that something wasn't right. Margaret's performance had been too perfect, too rehearsed, and I was about to find out just how far a desperate mother would go to keep her son. I couldn't sleep that night. My brain wouldn't shut up. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Margaret's smug face and those damn DNA results spread across her dining table like playing cards in some twisted game. But here's the thing about being a teacher. You learn to spot lies. Kids try to pull fast ones all day long. My dog ate my homework. I wasn't talking. I was just breathing loudly. You develop a sixth sense for bullshit. And something about Margaret's whole performance stank worse than the school cafeteria on Fish Stick Friday. I dragged myself out of bed at 4 a.m. and fired up my laptop. If Margaret could play detective, so could I. First red flag, the testing company. Precision Genetics Laboratory sounded official enough. But their website looked like it was built by a teenager. No physical address listed, no staff photos, just generic stock images of scientists in lab coats staring at test tubes. When I dug deeper, the domain was registered 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. Right around the time Margaret would have been planning her little dinner party ambush. Then I called my mom. Poor woman thought someone had died when her phone rang at dawn. Emma? What's wrong? Is David okay? Mom, I need you to remember something. When I was conceived, what was Dad's donor number? Long pause. Honey, are you feeling all right? Please, Mom. It's important. She sighed. I kept all the paperwork. Hold on. I heard her rummaging through boxes. Here it is. Donor 847C. Why are you asking about this now? Your wedding is today. 847C, not 247B like Margaret's fake results claimed. My hands were shaking as I called the original sperm bank. The receptionist wasn't supposed to give out information, but I explained my situation. Turns out donor 847C was a college student studying literature. He was 6 feet tall with brown hair and green eyes, just like my mom always told me. The pieces started falling into place like dominoes. But I needed more proof before I went nuclear on Margaret Ashford. I called my doctor's office and asked them to run a real DNA comparison. Rush job. Cost me $300 I didn't have, but worth every penny. The results came back that afternoon. No genetic relationship between David and me whatsoever. We were about as related as I was to the mailman. Margaret had faked everything. The anger hit me like a freight train. This woman had been so desperate to destroy my relationship that she'd fabricated scientific evidence. She'd watched me cry, watched David suffer, watched us both believe we were siblings, all because she couldn't stand the thought of sharing her precious son. Well, 2 could play that game. I printed out all my evidence and drove back to the mansion. My heart was pounding, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from pure, righteous fury. Margaret answered the door in a silk robe, looking surprised. Emma, I thought you'd be halfway to another state by now. We need to talk. I pushed past her into that ridiculous foyer with its marble floors and crystal chandelier. There's nothing left to discuss, dear. The situation is what it is. I spread my printouts across her precious coffee table. Actually, there's quite a lot to discuss. Like how you created a fake testing company, how the real donor numbers don't match, how you've been lying through your teeth. Her face went white, then red, then back to white. I don't know what you think you've discovered, but cut the crap, Margaret. The words felt good coming out. Your little scheme is falling apart faster than a house of cards in a hurricane. That's when David walked into the room and everything was about to change again. David took one look at the papers scattered across his mother's coffee table and his jaw dropped. What's all this? Your mother faked the DNA tests. I handed him the real results. We're not related, David. Not even close. Margaret's mask finally slipped. You have no idea what you're talking about. Really? Because I've got the phone records from Precision Genetics Laboratory, which, by the way, doesn't exist. The address you used is a Starbucks in downtown Portland. I pulled out another sheet. And here's the receipt for the fake letterhead you ordered online. They keep digital records of everything these days. David stared at his mother like he was seeing her for the first time. Mom, tell me you didn't actually do this. Margaret's composure cracked like an eggshell. You don't understand. She's taking you away from me. First it was boarding school, then college, and now her. I raised you by myself after your father died. You're all I have left. So, you made us think we were siblings? David's voice rose. You watched us suffer through that nightmare dinner and it was all lies? I was protecting our family. You were protecting yourself, I said. The anger was flowing through me like electricity. You've been sabotaging David's relationships for years, haven't you? How many other girlfriends did you drive away? Margaret's silence was answer enough. David ran his hands through his hair. Emma, I'm so sorry. I should have questioned it, should have trusted you over her. I looked at the man I'd almost married. The hurt was still there, raw and bleeding. You let her convince you I was disgusting. You sat there and watched her offer me money to disappear. I was in shock. I didn't know what to think. You should have thought about us, about what we meant to each other. I picked up my evidence papers. Instead, you chose to believe the worst. Margaret tried one last desperate move. Even if the tests were wrong. Can't you see she's not right for our family? David turned to his mother with steel in his voice. You're getting help, professional help, and you're going to apologize to Emma for what you put us through. I was already heading for the door. Save the apology, David. But don't save your relationship with your mother. Fix that. Just know it might take me a while to trust you again. Some stories end with grand romantic gestures. This one ended with me walking away, head high, knowing exactly what I was worth. The wedding dress stayed in my closet for months, but eventually I donated it. 6 months later, David showed up at my classroom with flowers and a promise to never doubt me again. That time, I said yes.